Uh, Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for being here this morning on Saturday. It's my pleasure to be here. For some time now, the Indore Management Association has asked me to come and do this session, and they've always told me about the grand setting and the audience here. Seeing it is absolutely believing it. I could not do it over the last 2 years because I had other commitments, and it clashed with one of the board meetings which I had to attend. But I'm really happy here. Very happy that there are about 2,500 students here. I believe leaders such as myself and other people who are here owe a lot and have to invest a lot in the students because they are our future. That's something which always excites me, and I'm really happy to see so many of young people here to actually participate in this conference. That's something which I really, truly value. The topic which I've been asked to speak about is turbulence, which is leading in turbulent times. There's absolutely no doubt that the world is going through a turbulent phase. There's absolutely no doubt that we, in some areas, are experiencing some turbulence. There's absolutely no doubt about that. What I'm going to talk to you about is how companies manage turbulence. What are the principles of managing turbulence when you're running a company, number one. But the principles of running a company are no different, I believe, from running a society or a family or individually. The same principles you can distill to say these apply to me in one way or the other. Mr. Tharoor, who spoke before me, we overlapped 4 years ago. We were at Kellogg's, the American Institute, where the topic was India of the future. And as always, it's a pleasure to listen to Mr. Tharoor and his views. So what am I going to cover for you today? First, what are the reasons for turbulence? Everybody experiences turbulence, but first you need to identify why does this occur? Okay, is this just happening? Is it happening to me? Is it happening to my company? Is it happening to my society? What are the reasons for turbulence? Second, what's happening in the Indian economy right now? And two concepts I want you to think about, which is how do you manage in as you go into turbulence? More important, how do you manage out as you get out of turbulence and look at the straight road ahead? And then a quick summary. First, turbulent times. They can happen for three types of reasons. Number one, the external environment is volatile, turbulent. Second, it can be internal to a company. Something the company does or does not do leads to turbulence, self-created. Third, a competitor can inflict turbulence on you. Okay, so there are three types of turbulence which a corporation would go through: external, internal, and competition-induced. Let's look at external environment today. If you look at the external environment today, there's absolutely no doubt that our GDP is slowing down. If you look at today's newspaper, they're saying 6.9. Earlier, we were talking of 8 and 9. The difference between 6.9 and 8.9 looks very small too. But on an economy of this size, 1.3 to 1.5 trillion, that's a hell of a lot. It's not small. So in a way, we've started accepting 6.9 and 7. That is the new normal for a country like India at this point of time. Why is this important? If you look at the last 20 years, in 20 years, real incomes have multiplied in this country thanks to the liberalization. It's very important for India to have a good growth rate. We cannot afford to slip back in terms of our growth rate. So growth is certainly slowing down. Okay, there's no doubt about it at this point of time. Second, as reflected, let's look at the stock market. Absolutely volatile. It's come off a very high in January 2011 at about 20,000. Today it's at about 16,000 in a matter of 11 months. Okay, that's a drop of about 25%. Okay, that's a lot again. It's not small by any measure. The Indian rupee, very volatile. In January this year, we were looking at about 45. Currently, we are looking at 52. That's 18% off, which means for companies and corporations which I represent, our volume growth has to be 18% more for us to have the same value growth. Okay? Very challenging. The benefit of this, of course, is that if your costs are in dollars, it helps you. That's all. But that's a very short-term help. It's not worth it. Having a stable rupee, and somewhere I believe between 45 to 47 is what makes sense for us. Okay, so GDP down to 6.9%, Sensex down by 25%, and the rupee-dollar ratio off by about 18%. Is that turbulent? It's certainly turbulent. It's not small. The trouble is all of them have come together at the same time, as they invariably do. So when you look at external turbulence, which is what I've described, the first thing we need to think about, whether as a company leader or the leader of a family seeing this through, how long will this last is the first question. So we need to put our best minds together to say, how long will this happen? How long will this last? Second, what's the effect of this turbulence on the industry which I represent or which you represent? And second, on your particular company. That's the second question you need to answer. Third, what actions do we need to take based on the effects we expect going forward? And finally, how do you communicate this to the wider audience who is your company and to the wider society? What do we need to do to communicate within our own company and to start influencing other people? So this is what one would tend to do when you're dealing with turbulence arising out of an external situation. Internal to company. The most important reason why a company goes through turbulence, self-inflicted as I call it, is leadership. If you look at the history of companies over the last 200 years, there are two reasons why companies fail big time. Number one, arrogant leadership. Number two, inability to learn and unlearn. That's the reason it happens. So leadership and its effect leads to a huge internal turbulence. So it's very important at any point of time to have stable, forward-looking leaders. The second reason why in a company you get turbulence is lack of accountability. When you have a lack of accountability in a company, you get a lot of turbulence. Leadership has a 3-time effect in terms of the results which a company generates. Lack of accountability, on the other hand, actually drains companies. So that's the second one. That's why companies go through internal turbulence. Third is the processes they follow. People take shortcuts. People do the wrong things. We've heard about the oil spills, etc. Could have been avoided if somebody had followed a process. Okay, that's the other reason. Lack of adherence to a process is what hurts companies and they go into turbulence. Most important of all, people start thinking short term. Look at the banking sector as a great example. When you think of your next quarter results and your next quarter bonus and don't worry about the long-term health of either the company or the industry, then you put the whole industry and yourself into a tailspin. So these are the reasons why a company internally would have turbulence. Leadership, lack of accountability, not following the right process, and always putting short-term ahead of long-term. Competitor inflicted. All of us are in the market trying to win the mind and the hearts of the consumers. Some competitors do it well, some don't. Invariably, when you have turbulence inflicted on you from a competitor, you need to ask yourself first, what's the answer? How long will it take to get the answer out into the marketplace? Once you've decided that, as the leader of the company or the board, you need to inspire the troops in the short term towards that answer. Next, while you're doing this, you have to be absolutely clear that while you're playing catch up, you also need to start leading. It's not enough to play catch up because somebody else will now set the new rule. So you have to change the area of play if you don't want to be in that turbulent phase. And finally, you always have to play to your strengths. You have to look at the advantages that you can create in that whole ecosystem. So key questions in turbulent times. How to conserve cash without sacrificing strategic investments. All costs are good costs or bad costs. And you have to think of costs like that and invest significantly on the people side as you go through turbulence. How do you deal with volatility? How does a company deal with an exchange rate which is there right now? How do you deal with it? Each company will have its philosophy, but you have to have a clear answer. You cannot live from day to day. For example, if you're dependent on imports, will you assume that the dollar will be 55 or will you assume it's 52? If you assume that the dollar is 52, you will need a price increase every second day or every week if the dollar goes up to 52.30. If you assume the dollar is 54, it gives you a cushion for 3 to 4 months. A very simple point like that. You have to start thinking about your pricing in that context. How do you keep employee morale up amidst uncertainty? Okay? People do not like ambiguity and uncertainty. Anybody, whether it's an individual, whether it's a family, whether it's a society, or whether it is a corporation, they don't like it. I was in Dubai 3 days ago. I was meeting a bunch of classmates from IMA Calcutta. Almost all of them asked me, Shiv, are our investments in India safe? What do you think is happening in India? And I told them, India is absolutely safe, don't worry. But the uncertainty which is being created, okay, is affecting them. Nobody likes uncertainty. Nobody likes ambiguity in life. And I think the earlier you resolve it, the better it is. And finally, how do you manage in and out, which is what I'll talk about. First, a turbulence is a great chance to change the game. A turbulence is a great chance to change the game. It is not something to be afraid of. Good companies embrace turbulence and say, I will alter what I'm doing in order to win for the future. It's a great chance. Don't be worried about it. Take it as an opportunity. If you look at every turbulent period in history, 3 out of the top 10 firms in every industry drop out of that list in turbulence. Okay? Just 3 out of 10 just drop out. It's an enormous place for you to get fitter and better. The inefficient invariably do not survive a turbulent phase. That's the second lesson.